himself, I think, but were dedicated to a fellow violinist. And we reckon that his Czardas is based on that of Monty, which appeared in 1904. We think he probably learnt that when he was a young violinist, and it was all the rage. And if I play you the first few notes, and then the first few notes of Kaludi's Czardas, you'll see how similar they are. So it's a sort of like a homage, I think, really, to Monty. This appeared some 20 years later, in fact 30 years later, and Linda's husband found it in a charity shop, so we're very lucky to have it. It's a very rare piece of music, so here it is, Kaludi's Czardas, or if you want to call him his proper name, Chrétien Register, who was Belgian. Our next piece, two guitars, originated in a cafe where Ivan Vasiliev had a gypsy band. It was in Russia in the second half of the 19th century. If you went to a good restaurant, they would have a gypsy band. And in fact, you could listen to them pretty much all day. So Ivan's friend, the poet Apollon, whose name I've forgotten, but anyway, he's called Apollon, very good name for a poet. He used to come every day and he wrote a poem in response to the gypsy band that Ivan ran every single day in this restaurant. And then Ivan wrote a song to the words of the poem. So it was a sort of three-way thing, not the usual. And the song is actually very, very sad. It begins with, "Only you, my seven-stringed guitar, listen to me." Yes, they did have a seven-string guitar in those days, not popular anymore. There were too many strings. But this tune actually became very famous and lots of people sang it. I don't know if they just like miserable tunes or what it was, but apparently a lot of rude lyrics were added. And the authorities came down pretty hard on this, so they didn't want any nasty words in Russian restaurants. But eventually, the song also reached places like Paris, where Charles Aznavour gave it a rendition, and even the United States, where Harry Horlick and his gypsy band used to play it as the theme tune between 1922 and 1937 of the Atlantic and Pacific Radio Hour. So if you've heard it, it might be from then, although I don't think anyone's old enough to remember it here. And the reason I mention that is because we are playing the version which has the pizzicato string sounds which imitate the plucked guitar. And that was actually copyrighted in America in 1925, almost to the day that we're playing it, beginning of December 1925. So here it is, but it's also something that we improvise on, so it's never the same twice.
very different take on this style of music, much earlier. It was written in 1795 by Haydn at the end of his second trip to London. It was dedicated to his great friend Rebecca Schroeter. He had a very long correspondence with her, and he apparently said that if he hadn't already been taken, he would have married her. Apparently his wife hasn't done very well in history. I read somewhere that apparently she used to use his manuscripts to line cake tins. Anyway, this piece is the final movement of a trio in G major, and it's known as the Gypsy Rondo. It was actually entitled Rondo in the Hungarian Style. And Haydn would have been very familiar with this style of music because his patrons, the Esterházy family, employed Romany musicians at court, and he was really fascinated with this kind of music. So a rondo, being like a lovely sandwich, has an opening theme, like a piece of bread, and then in between each layer of bread we have these delicious fillings with lovely different gypsy tunes and different techniques, including left-hand pizzicato, big changes of dynamic, lots of accents where you're not expecting them. One of the tunes that's used, as Jacqui mentioned, that even the soldiers dance in Hungary, one of them is a fabunkos, which was a recruiting dance that would have been played by a group of Romany musicians and danced by the hussars to try and convince people to join the army. We might not do that, but we hope we'll make you want to dance at least.
So our next piece, Dumki Trio. The dumka is apparently a Ukrainian word for sort of epic ballads sung by sort of captive peoples, and so it's quite melancholic and contemplative. Dvorak used the dumka, or used a dumki, which is the plural, in this piece to great effect. He has 3 of them at least, and they are interspersed with more sort of cheerful pieces, sections. He wrote this in 1891, and it took him about 3 months to complete, followed 2 months later by the first performance, which he was playing the piano in. And he commented after 44 performances that it was still a very tricky piece to perform. So he did 40 of those performances on a concert tour where he was leaving his homeland. So he toured Moravia and Bohemia. He was leaving to get a post as head of the music conservatory in New York. And so that's why he did so many. The other thing I ought to say is that there is sort of, it is kind of gypsy feel, and there is a sort of lovely bit on the piano which sounds very much like the cimbalum. the wonderful Jacqui, who is going to read us a poem.
Good afternoon. Here we have a piece from The Winter's Tale by William Shakespeare. Act 4, Scene 1. Enter Time, the chorus. I that please some try all, both joy and terror, of good and bad, that makes and unfolds error. Now take upon me, in the name of time, to use my wings. Impute it not a crime to me or my swift passage that I slide over 16 years and leave the growth untried of that wide gap, since it is in my power to overthrow law. But let time's news be known what is brought forth, a shepherd's daughter, and what to her adheres, which follows after, is the argument of time. And here she is, Perdita, Act 4, Scene 4. I would that I had some flowers of the spring that might become your time of day, and yours, that where upon your virgin branches yet your maidenhead's growing. O Proserpina, for the flowers now that frighted thou lett'st fall from Dis's wagon, daffodils that come before the swallow dares and take the winds of March with beauty, violets dim but sweeter than the lids of Juno's eyes or Cytherea's breath, pale primroses that die unmarried ere they can behold bright Phoebus in his strength, a malady most incident to maids, bold oxlips and the crown imperial, lilies of all kinds, the flower de luce being one. Oh, these I lack to make you garlands of, and my sweet friend to strew him o'er and o'er. What? Like a course? No, like a bank for love to lie and play on, not like a course. Or if not to be buried, but quick and in mine arms. Come take your flowers. Methinks I play as I have seen them do in wits and pastorals. Sure, this robe of mine does change my disposition.
Songs my mother taught me. It is actually just one song, I think, really, but it was written in 1880, and Dvorak based it on poems by the poet Adolf Hayduck. I might read it. It's quite short. In the days long vanished, seldom from her eyelids were the teardrops banished. Now I teach my children each melodious measure. Oft the tears are flowing, oft they flow from my memory's treasure. And so, yes, it was the fourth of these 7 gypsy songs. And in 1914, Fritz Kreisler arranged this piece for violin and piano, and that's how it achieved popularity. And I might add that on Classic FM, used it, or it came in their top 10 pieces to play for Mother's Day.
pieces we're going to play are 3 of Bartók's Romanian dances. He was a great collector of folk songs, and these particular ones came from Transylvania. We're going to play 3 of them, but they almost sound just like 2. The first is very slow, it's kind of lonely and mournful. It's the Song of the Mountain Horn. And then the next 2 are a Romanian polka, which has an uneven meter. We have 2, 3, and 4 beats in a bar, so it feels a bit lopsided as a dance. It's a children's dance. And then the final one is the fast dance, which is a couple's courting dance, which gets ever faster and faster and faster, and then it ends just like that, almost as if they fall into the ground. So don't be surprised.
Four-legged friend over there who's a fan. So thank you so much for coming, and we think you were dancing there. It looked pretty lively in the room, and we certainly were, and we hope that you'll carry on that feeling of wanting to dance as you go home, because that's what it's all about, cheering ourselves up, and isn't there some magnificent music out there? So next month will be very different. You'll be, well, not glad to know, but you'll know that that always happens every month, that we're going to play some more calming music, mostly, with some lively things in between, but there will be pieces like, for example, Elgar's The Snow, which is very, very beautiful and ethereal, and what else we got? Remember? Dusk by Armstrong Gibbs, in a new arrangement, and The Christmas Tree Waltz by Rebikoff. It's a bit early for Christmas, but lots of things about being warm in the cold and being calm in that awful flurry of, well, it's not really awful, but very stressful sometimes, flurry of activity that leads up to Christmas. So early December, don't get too excited, but we are going to calm you down. So hope to see you then. If you haven't been before, there's a whopping great basket. We're very ambitious there. You do your very best to fill it, and we say thank you hugely in advance for your donations, which are very generous. And so we then come back next month. And thank you very much, Helen, for doing things. And you're going to say a little bit about some extra concerts that are happening here. So over to Helen.
Isn't it wonderful that we can come out on a grey afternoon and just have some wonderful music? Well, you don't have to wait a whole month, because in a fortnight's time, at the same time, Abbey Row Baroque, the little group that John, the Abbey organist, and I and 3 other people play in, we're doing a similar concert, so that's the 18th, Tuesday the 18th, and then there's a paying concert on Friday the 21st, part of the Malmesbury Abbey Music Society programme, called Americans in Paris, and it's a very well-known pianist called David Gordon. So I've put little flyers out at the back. If you're interested, take one, and you can get your tickets from Care Bladen or online. So thank you again for coming this afternoon. Come again soon. Come and visit the cafe. Come and be part of Malmesbury Abbey. And a big thank you, the last thank you to Trio Paradis.